Indeed, over the last years, many have been the times in which the world has collectively held its breath. And many have been the mornings in which we have woken up to a new, more dangerous reality. And once again, we meet here today in a world more precarious and more menacing than it was 12 or 6 or even 1 month ago. The Iranian attack on Israel and the chilling sight of 185 drones and around 150 cruise and surface-to-surface missiles is the latest seismic event of our generation. And at the same time, we face the urgent priority of supporting Ukraine as the Russian-inflicted war on its territory becomes ever more bloody, intense, and drawn out. And we need to work with our partners to ensuring regional stability. But we also do need to take stock and look deeper at what Iran's assault means. Because the attack, the defense, and the aftermath are all instructive in different ways. But what we can already see is that this attack marks the weapons used were far greater in number and in firepower than those that have been previously employed by Iran. Is the nature of the defense. It is truly remarkable how effectively and swiftly defense systems were able to intercept virtually every single drone or missile. But it is no miracle. It rather shows the real value of consistent, long-term investment in advanced defense capabilities and technologies. And above all, it shows the value of building partnerships and cooperation with allies. The central role of the United States, the UK, France, and others should not be underestimated. And nor should the role of the Arab countries in the region in averting a far greater damage. And the third point about this weekend is what it tells us about the wider threat landscape. Because this attack should not be seen in isolation. It was the latest signal of intent of a new league of authoritarians. Russia's brutal war of aggression against Ukraine is now in its 3rd year, and it is more entrenched and intense than ever. North Korea is delivering order after order of ammunition shells to Russia. Iranian drones are flying over Ukrainian cities on a daily basis. Iran is even helping Russia with the technology and the manufacturing it needs to build those drones on home soil. States. Non-state groups, like the Houthis, are being armed with new tech weapons to inflict untold damage. The new League of Authoritarians is working in concert and to stretch our democracies to the breaking point. So, ladies and gentlemen, the point is that the world is as dangerous as it has been for generations, and Europe is in the middle of it. So this is why it is time for the European awakening on defense and security. Because there is so much at stake here. Our freedom and our prosperity depend on our security. And we have to bring our actions in line with the changing security environment. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why we need to start working on the future of our security architecture with all of the speed and all of the political will that it requires. As part of this, there will be core action, which will always remain, of course, in the hands of our member states. So let me be very clear. There will be always, the member states will always be responsible for their troops, for example, and all the decisions linked to that, from recruitment to training, from the doctrine that is so important, to the deployment decision. This is absolutely the foundation for every member state. But Europe also has tools and responsibilities in the area that is critical to our defense. Take the single market, or take research, take the innovation point, or industry. These are all European competences and much more. So we need to use Europe's combined financial, structural, and political strength where it can have the biggest impact. Because Europe's defense is a task for all of Europe, with member states and EU institutions closely working together. Now, we have shown in the last years how this can work in practice. Member states have stepped up their defense spending. The national defense budgets have already risen by 20% since 2022, so the beginning of the Russian aggression in Ukraine. This has started to compensate for the underinvestment of years. And at the same time, we're spending more on common capabilities and capacities and projects between Europeans. Just take the European Peace Facility that has mobilized 6.1 billion euros to support the Ukrainian armed forces with lethal and non-lethal military equipment and supplies. And of course, the European Defence Fund is investing in high-end defense capabilities in critical areas. You know them, such as naval or the ground, the air combat, space-based early warning, or take cyber. And now with our most recent proposal for a European defense industrial program, we propose to dedicate an additional 1.5 billion euros from the EU budget. So we know that it can be done, and we're showing the way to a more sovereign Europe. And here at that point, a more sovereign Europe, let me be very clear. European sovereignty is needed, but European sovereignty will never be at the expense of our partners and friends. And it will certainly never affect the importance and the need for our NATO alliance. In fact, a more sovereign Europe, and you know it, in particular in defense, is vital to strengthening NATO, as member states have plain and simply one single set of forces. You're familiar with that. But at its core, European sovereignty is about taking responsibility ourselves, taking responsibility for what is vital and even existential for us. And that is precisely what leaders agreed in the Versailles Agenda just after the start of the war, and that is what we followed up by the Granada Declaration. So, ladies and gentlemen, as the world gets more dangerous, it is now time to build on this and take the next leap forward on security and defense. And I believe that at European level, our work should focus around three core priorities. The first is preparedness, the second is investment, and the third is partnerships. Let's start with preparedness. Strengthening Europe's preparedness is an urgent task. As the geopolitical and security landscape becomes more difficult, so the threats faced by European countries become not only more acute, but also more complex. And in response, we need to be better prepared to face multidimensional threats which cross over and intensify each other. And given the breadth of the risk, this cannot just be a task for one country or one defense community. It is a much broader task that will need a whole-of-society approach. The starting point for this is having a very clear picture of the threat landscape and frame our response accordingly. And this is why Josep Borrell and myself, we have asked the former president of Finland, Sauli Niinistö, to lead the work on a report on European Union preparedness. So this will tap into President Niinistö's great experience, but of course also into the experience of countries like Finland and the Baltic states. They not only have an acute understanding of the risks, but also of how an integrated and comprehensive response can be developed. And once again, this will require action both at national and at European level. At the European level, there's a lot we can do. On risk identification, for example, and on more regularly assessing the threat landscape. Europe can, of course, also help coordinate the military and the civilian domains. Military and civilian actors need to be fully capable and ready for all types of emergencies. And this has to be based on a broad effort across society and involving different ministries at the same time in a seamless way. And crucially, playing a role in rearming of Europe, for instance, by supporting industry to manufacture the necessary capabilities, to respond to all scenarios, also including the highest level of intensity. Now, setting this approach out on paper can be an invaluable building block for a comprehensive European Union preparedness strategy. And this, in turn, can have dissuasive effects on threat actors, lower residual risks, and crucially, offer greater assurance to our citizens and their safety and security. The second point is about investment and industrial capacity. The threat of war may not be imminent, but it is not impossible. We should be prepared. And that starts with the urgent need to rebuild, replenish, and transform member states' armed forces. So in doing so, Europe should strive to develop and manufacture the next generation of battle-winning operational capabilities, and to ensure it has the sufficient quantity of material and the technological superiority that we may need in the future. That means turbocharging our defense industrial capacity in the next 5 years. That's the task of the moment. And at the heart of this must be one simple principle. And you've heard it many times today already. Europe must spend more, Europe must spend better, and Europe must spend European. Spending better starts by aggregating demand among the member states. Spending European means that our investments not only increase our security, but of course also bring jobs, know-how, and economic growth to the European Union. And spending together will help to reduce, you know it, fragmentation, enhance cost effectiveness, and increase the so much needed interoperability of our armed forces. But to do this, we must collectively send a strong signal to industry, to you. And this is why we will look at how to facilitate off-take agreements for interested member states, because this would give our defense industry and our companies in the defense industry stable orders and predictability in the long run, That's the most important, the predictability for you to really invest in what matters. It will increase the support for the industrial ramp-up, as we are now doing with the ammunition. You have heard about it, ASAP. We will also identify European defense projects of common interest. That means, in other words, that we focus efforts and resources on the topic or the structure that has the biggest impact and the most added value. And we will propose on how to use the economic power of the European Union to step up investment in defense and enhance the access to finance. That is so crucial for you. In doing so, of course, we will focus on innovation to ensure that Europe has the edge in the new technologies which we see being deployed across the world in different conflicts. Ladies and gentlemen, the last point is about partnerships. As we strengthen our own sovereignty of defense, our own sovereignty of industry and key technologies, we will, of course, strengthen our core partnership with NATO. A more sovereign, a more prepared and better financed European defense will, of course, only serve to make NATO stronger. Over the last years, we have increased our cooperation with NATO, for example, against cyber attacks, for better military mobility, or to fight disinformation, the hybrid threats that we are facing. We've seen these hybrid threats and we have addressed them together with NATO. We've seen these hybrid threats against Latvia, against Poland, against Lithuania, for example, organized by the Lukashenko regime. And we have seen 2 more European members join the alliance. And we have worked hand in hand when it comes to supporting Ukraine with what it needs to win this war. We will continue ensuring that our cooperation gets stronger. And at the same time, we need to look at whether we, our society, our security and our defense cooperation will need perhaps other partners, such as the United Kingdom. And moreover, we have proposed to increasingly bring Ukraine into the latest proposals for our European Defence Industrial Programme. So the door is open for partners to join, for partners to be included in our Defence Industrial Programme, because I think it is time to step together on defense forward in a way that certainly will be challenging, but together we will be able to master it. It will require a new European defense mindset, a new European defense mindset from member state to institutions to industry to investors alike. And of course, it will require the political and the moral courage to stand with Ukraine here on European soil for as long as it takes. Because, ladies and gentlemen, the cost of insecurity, the cost of a Russian victory, is so far greater than any savings we could make now. The cost of facing multiple threats and facing conflicts without being prepared is far greater than we can afford. And this is why it is time for Europe to step up on defense. It is time for Europe to step up on security. I thank you for your attention, and long live Europe. Thank you so much.